Hi, everybody. I'm Chad Cool. Welcome to another edition of the Northland Outdoors Podcast, and welcome to Minnesota Walleye Fishing Opener Week. Unofficially, easily one of the biggest holidays of the year in the land of 10,000 lakes, and why not? It's just a tremendous celebration of the outdoors. It's a celebration of surviving another Minnesota or cold Northland winter. And beyond all of that, it's a celebration of friends and family and spending time in the outdoors. And guess what? The icing on the cake is maybe we get to catch a few fish. So today, it's going to be just you and me. No guest today, you and me, and we're going to talk early season walleye fishing, specifically opening weekend walleye fishing and the strategies that I use that have really changed over the years and have been pretty successful. I'm going to tell you how I approach a lake early season, especially opening day. And I'm just going to share my thoughts on all of that with you, and hopefully you can pick out a nugget or two, and maybe it'll help you have some success this 2025 Minnesota Walleye Fishing Opener. Before we get to the discussion, however, let's thank our sponsors. Have to do that because without them, none of this would happen. In particular, Ray's Sport and Marine. I cannot wait to get the 1875 Lund Pro Guide and the Mercury 94 stroke back out on the water this weekend. It's been out a couple of times already, but out after walleyes this weekend. I can't wait to do it, and thank you so much, Ray's Marine, for getting us set up with that rig. It's an unbelievable boat. Also, Muscatel Burns Ford in Hawley. I can't get the Pro Guide to the lake without our help from the boys at Muscatel Burns Ford. Make sure if you need a Ford, talk to my buddy Ward and Muscatel Burns Ford in Hawley. Also, Lake of the Woods Tourism. Ice is finally out on the big lake up there. The crown of Minnesota is ice-free, so opening weekend, get up there. You're going to find lots and lots of walleye and sauger. Great destination for opener. Also, a place that doesn't need an opening day. Devil's Lake Tourism, thank you so much for your support. We've been up there a couple of times already doing the shore fishing thing for walleyes, caught some beautiful fish. So Devil's Lake, always year-round, a great destination for finding and catching walleyes. So thank you to our sponsors. Another quick reminder, make sure you check your local listings and tune in to Northland Outdoors Television. We're right in the middle of our 26-week season on the WDAY ABC network all across the state of North Dakota, eastern Montana, western Minnesota, northern Minnesota. We're also on KSFL in Sioux Falls and out at KNBN in Rapid City, so all of South Dakota can enjoy Northland Outdoors Television. Some awesome shows this year. Beautiful big fish and some great waterfowl hunts, so make sure that you check your local listings and tune in. Do not miss an episode of Northland Outdoors TV. One last request. If you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, any of those, give us a second and give us a good review, a 5-star, 4 or 5-star review if you would, especially if you like the show, right? It really helps drive the show up in the standings, so we'd appreciate any and all feedback we can get from you wherever you download and listen to your podcast. So that takes care of all of that business work. Let's talk walleye fishing. The Minnesota Walleye Opener, in fact, right now on the Northland Outdoors Podcast. Walleyes are tricky any time of the year. There's no question about it. That's why people are so passionate about walleye fishing, because it's not what I would call a gimme fish. You have to understand how walleyes live, how they feed, when, where, those kinds of things. And it's just not an automatic fish to go out and catch. It's challenging. Early season walleyes can be especially challenging because a lot of times during that midsummer pattern into the fall, for a number of months there, walleyes become a little more predictable maybe in their location. They set up obvious deeper water structure. They feed a lot at night or in the low light periods. You can kind of target those areas in those specific times and usually have success. But early in the season, when water is as cold as it is still now, and walleyes are either pre-spawn, spawning, or post-spawn. They can be in any of those three stages of their yearly cycle, which means they can be from 1 foot, 2 feet of water, all the way out to deep 15, 16, 20 feet of water. It just depends on where they are on your particular lake this time of year, and you kind of have to check all of those locations in order to find them. It's unique early in the season because every lake, no matter what time of year you fish it, every lake's going to be a little different. But this time of year, each lake is going to be extremely different. In other words, you could be on one lake, happens to be a little shallower, maybe a max depth of 25 or 30 feet. It's not very big, okay, smaller in acreage. That lake is going to warm up a lot faster, lose its ice sooner, and warm up a lot faster. Just a mile down the road, you could have another lake that maybe is twice as big and is 50, 60, 70 feet deep at its deepest. That lake, maybe the ice went out just a few days ago or a week ago or so, and the water temperature there is going to be much cooler, much slower to warm up. That has a huge effect on where the walleyes are going to be located on opening day, early in the season, or opening weekend. Our first challenge when we get on any body of water, whichever one that is where are those fish going to be located? So the first thing I'm going to do is talk about location. Where do we find walleyes early in the season? And again, it's going to depend really a lot on your water temperature. So as you get on whatever lake you choose, whether it's Lake of the Woods, Leech, Red, one of the big boys, or it's just a small neighborhood lake, something that's only 200, 300 acres close by, or where you have your cabin, the first thing I'm going to look at is what is my surface water temp. Walleyes are going to spawn water temps 45 to the low 50s, somewhere in there, right in that upper 40 range water temperature is when they're going to spawn. There's no set exact number, okay, but it's in that range that walleyes will be in full-fledged spawn. Where do they spawn? Walleyes, obviously, like just about all fish, need hard bottom areas in order to spawn. So the first thing I'm going to do is check my water temp. Okay, if my water temp is still in that low 50s degree range, then I know the fish are probably still some pre-spawn, some actively spawning, some post-spawn. We're right in the meat of that time when they're going to be dropping eggs. Okay, so I'm going to look for those hard bottom areas on the lake. I'll look at the map, okay, and most of today's great mapping, Garmin is what we use here in Northland Outdoors, and the Garmin mapping system partnered with Navionics is absolutely phenomenal, and it will show you on the map where there is rocky area. It'll actually say rocks or gravel, sand, those kinds of things. So that's what I'm going to look for to start with, rocky shorelines. And I use my eyes too. What most people forget is that what you see on the shoreline very often is what extends out into the water. So if I'm cruising along and I see boulders and big rocks in a really rocky shoreline, you can be pretty assured that out quite a ways from that shoreline, it's going to be rocky. Okay, it doesn't just end where the water hits the rocks. So if I see a weedy shoreline, odds are it's going to be a softer bottom, weedy area out from there. If I see a rocky shoreline, I'm expecting it's going to be rock, gravel, sand, that kind of thing. So I'm going to locate an area where I know there's some hard bottom. And then instead of a really steep or hard drop from shore, I want something that extends out in that 2, 3, 4, 5 feet of water, a flat that comes out from shore quite a ways, a point perhaps that comes out, that maybe tops out at about 5 or 6 feet, that's rocky on top and has a large flat area where I know it's hard bottom there. Those are the kinds of areas that I'm going to look for. The last piece of the puzzle is if you have a current area on your lake, a river flowing in, or a stream, or a creek even, anything that is pushing current into your lake and it's hard bottom where that flows in, and most of the time it is, boy, I tell you what, I would key on that spot first, because walleyes love a little current when they're looking for a place to spawn. It really helps with spawning success to have moving water over those eggs. So those are the places I'm going to look for. Once I've located a spot, where am I going to start on that spot? Well, usually, as long as my water temperatures are where I think they're going to be, in that upper 40s, low 50s to mid 50s, I am going to look for fish, walleyes in particular, shallow, early in the year. And this is something that's kind of changed from me over the years. I used to be one of those guys that thought he had to be out 10, 12, 14 feet, look for what we call the weed line. And of course, that hasn't really even grown up yet this time of year. And walleyes don't go any shallower than that. Well, that's just simply not true. Walleyes are a shallow water fish, specific times of the year and specific times of day all year long. But opening weekend in particular, I am going to look shallow to start with. And I am not anymore, I'm almost rarely do I employ live bait anymore. Live bait is always in the boat, and it has its place, and there are times when it is fantastic. But developments in soft plastics, developments in jigs, and those kinds of things, and other baits, have really eliminated the need for live bait all the time. So my first choice, what's going to be tied on first cast Saturday morning, is going to be a jig and a plastic. And I have 3 different plastics here that I will have tied on that I'm going to use. And let's just go through them right now. The first, and they're basically 2 different types. One is a more of a reaction strike bait, a little louder, faster moving. The other one is a little more subtle. I like to give them that choice. But the first one is going to be a louder, faster moving bait. Very simple. A paddle tail plastic of some kind. One of my all-time favorites is the Berkeley Ripple Shad, and this is a 3.5-inch Ripple Shad. Actually, this is a 4-inch Ripple Shad right here in my hand. And that's probably what's going to be tied on for the first cast of the season on Saturday. This particular bait, with its boot tail action, lots and lots of action. Okay, you can fish it super fast. You can fish it slow. You can come with a straight swimming retrieve, or you can work it more like a jigging motion, yo-yoing motion. And that's my favorite way to approach it on early season walleyes. What it goes on for me is a swim bait jig. And this is the newest one from our friends at Mission Tackle. And this has become my all-time favorite swim bait jig head design for one reason and one reason only. And you notice that long shank. Okay. Standard jig. And this is Mission Tackle's Walleye Slayer jig. Okay. It has that standard length shaft here, and that's great for its applications. But what I love about this swim bait jig is not only the head design, which comes through the water so nicely, but it's that long shank. And what that does is gets that hook point further back on my plastic than a standard jig. You notice if I place this on here, you can see where that jig head, that point comes through a good 2 inches back from the nose of that plastic, compared to a standard shaft length. And you can see where that shows up. Okay. That's almost a full inch farther back with that long shaft on the Mission Tackle swim bait jig head. It's a huge advantage. As reaction strikes, a lot of time, they're just grabbing at the bait. And a lot of times you'll get them just grab the tail and you won't get a hook set into them, right? This, with the hook that far back, they grab it, and you have a much better hookup ratio with this particular jig. It's a fantastic combination. How do I work it? Fairly simple. In fact, it's really simple. The key early in the season is a really long cast. Get that bait away from the boat. No more straight below the boat vertical jigging, because we're fishing in 2, 3, 4, 5 feet of water where these fish are going to be located. Early in the year like this, the water on just about every lake is going to be extremely clear, if not crystal clear. If you get that boat anywhere within 20, 30 yards of those fish, they're going to spook from the boat and they're going to be gone, and you're not going to catch them. So long casts are key, and we'll get into the tackle in just a minute and how we accomplish that. But I'll make the longest cast that I can make. Okay, then let the bait sink to the bottom. Then it's just a lift, not a real hard rip, just a lifting action of about 2 or 3 feet. And then I drop the rod tip back down towards the bait, a couple of quick reels to keep that line fairly tight, and let the bait just fall naturally to the bottom. Wait half a second to a second, repeat. And what happens is when that bait is lifted, that tail just rips through the water, makes a ton of noise, and when you drop it, it sinks slowly, and that paddle tail just wobbles right down to the bottom. That's when you're going to get your strike. 9 times out of 10 will be on the fall, we call it. Rip, lift, fall, bite is usually the rotation or the the sequence of events when you're fishing these. Okay? Fantastic. One tip, make sure that you're using a heavy enough jig head. One of the other rules that is, for me, old rules that's been kind of smashed in the last number of years is that it's a common tip to use the lightest jig head that you can get away with for walleyes. You want to be so subtle, 16th ounce, 1/8 ounce, 1/4 ounce is just, now you're pushing it way big, okay? Not with these baits. Okay, this is a 3/8 ounce jig. That's as small as I'm going to go with a swim bait jig head. In fact, I'll probably throw a 1/2 ounce jig more often than a 3/8. And again, I know we're only talking about 4 or 5 feet of water, but the weight of the jig is not to get to the bottom. The weight of the jig is to give you the right action on your bait. Okay, heavier jig, when it falls, it's going to fall fast enough to get that tail really wobbling all the way to the bottom. Okay. Too light a jig, it's going to fall slow and you won't have any action. The water resistance is not enough to make that tail move. So, big tip is to use a heavy enough jig, swim bait jig, when you're throwing swim baits. Okay, so the Berkley Ripple Shad swim bait is the first one for me, and I have one other new swim bait model that really has my attention, and it's only been out, I think last year Berkley came out with this one. Okay, this is the, I'm going to forget the Drip Swimmer is the name of this. 2 things I love about this. One is such realistic color. I mean, if you were to look at this at a glance, you would think for sure you had a live minnow in your hand. The color schemes on these are fantastic. The second thing that I just absolutely love is this tiny little paddle tail on the back, and you can see how thin that tail is. I mean, I can't hold it still, even when I try to hold it still. This is a swim bait that you can get away with a lot lighter jig head. You could drop down easily to an 1/8 ounce jig head with this, because that little light swim bait tail, boot tail, no matter how slow it's falling, is just going to kick like crazy. So I'll have loud and aggressive, okay, and then medium. This still has quite a bit of action, but I can work it slower and I can work it with a lighter bait. So I'll have that one tied on as well. Again, that's the Drip Swimmer from Berkley. But What is currently taking the place as my all-time favorite walleye plastic right now at the moment is a 4-inch Gulp, Berkeley Gulp minnow. I absolutely love this bait. There's a few reasons for it. But over the last couple of years, I've caught more walleyes on this particular plastic than on any other jig, crankbait, live bait, spinner, anything else I own. Walleyes absolutely love the action on this bait. They love the shape. And I gotta believe that the Gulp scent and flavor has something to do with it as well. It's just what the scientists at Berkeley have designed with the Gulp line of baits is really phenomenal, and it's been fantastic. But this is my subtle choice. Okay, high action ripple shad, a little bit more subtle with the drip swimmer. But when I want to go a little more old school walleye subtle, now I drop down to the Gulp minnow. So you can see it's just a fluke tail plastic, doesn't have that boot, so it's not going to sit and thing. It's just, or a flop as it falls. It's just going to have a little more of a natural minnow tail shimmer. Okay, but I'm going to work it, and for this particular bait, I'm going to put it on a traditional, more of a traditional jig head. This is the Walleye Slayer line from Mission Tackle. I absolutely love this jig. Okay, and the biggest reason is that cone-shaped, you can see it here on this camera if you're watching the video version. It's a cone-shaped head. It's got a little bit of a point to it. And really what that does is gives it just a tremendous straight and faster fall rate. Okay, it comes through the water so nicely, both on the lift and on the fall. Really a nice bait design. Plus has the wire bait keeper, which does a great job of keeping these baits attached, which is a concern with the Gulp minnows. They're a little softer bait, which was one of the things I think makes them so attractive to walleyes, but they do pull off a standard jig fairly easy, so the good bait keeper is key. How do I fish them? Same deal. Going to be in the same areas, shallow, hard bottom areas, and I will make, again, as long a cast as I can make, and then I will lift it. But with the Gulp minnow, it's much less aggressive. The lift will be less than a foot, okay, and then a drop, and again, and a drop. And then with the Gulp minnow, a lot of times I'll employ just a little twitch between lifts. And that bait will up, shimmy down, up, shimmy down. And then when you pop it along the bottom, it really looks, has a lifelike look to it, because this bait, being a fluke style, will actually dart from side to side a little bit. So those pops, it'll get up and just dart along and then lift it again and drop it. And I'm telling you, early season walleyes, well, walleyes year round, to be honest with you, just absolutely can't resist it. So 3 plastics, there they are. Different jig heads. The one other jig that I wanted to put out was the Mission Tackle's heavyweight jig, the tungsten jig, the heavy metal, they call it. Tremendous jig, smaller package, but with a heavy weight. And if you're using forward-facing sonar, which so many of us are these days, this is a fantastic bait because it shows up just unbelievably on the forward-facing sonar. So I would use that one with the Gulp minnow as well. So big, loud ripple shad, slightly more subtle drip swimmer, and then the subtlest of my selections, the Gulp minnow. Love those 3 plastics. Okay, those 3 will be tied up. The one other jig option that I will have available is a hair jig. Okay, this is Mission Tackle's bucktail, walleye bucktail jig. Okay, it's a fantastic little hair jig, and this is the most subtle of all. And this one, if I'm really got negative fish, I can throw this out there and just basically drag it along the bottom. Little twitches, subtle twitches, and that hair just kind of pulsates, and it's an excellent option. So I'll always have a hair jig tied up as well. One of the things that is effective, especially if the fish are maybe not as aggressive as you'd like to see as far as feeding goes is getting reaction strikes. So if I had to pick a number 2 bait for opening day, number 1 is going to be that ripple shad. Number 2 is going to be go extremely loud, and it's going to be a rattle bait. Okay, this is a Rapala Rip and Wrap. This is the number 7 right here. Okay, I like the 7s and I like the 6s. Those are my 2 favorite sizes for walleye fishing. This is a loud, aggressive bait that gets great reaction strikes from fish. The funny thing is I'm going to fish it almost identically to the way I fish that ripple shad. So again, a couple of the things that are fantastic about this particular bait is you can cast it an absolute country mile. And that is key this time of year. Again, get that bait as far from the boat as you can. So long cast. I'm going to let that bait sink on a tight line. Okay, all of these baits, as I let them do that initial drop, I want to have a tight line. I want to be able to feel that bait as it's falling, because you'd be surprised how many times you're going to get bit on that initial fall. The bait hitting the water gets the fish's attention in shallow water. They turn, they look, and here comes a bait dropping in front of their face, and they'll eat it. Happens all the time, so be prepared. So fall on a tight line. When it hits the bottom, this one is an aggressive rip. 3 or 4 feet, lift it hard. You'll feel that bait. Okay, almost, personally, I call it a burp. You can feel it go through the water because it rattles and rips so hard as you rip it up. Okay, you can just hear that bait through your line ripping through the water. Again, rip, drop your rod towards that bait and give it a couple quick cranks so you can tighten up the line so you can feel it, and then just let it fall. And it'll fall fast. These are heavy baits, and hit the bottom. But again, as with the ripple shads and the plastics, that bite is going to come 9 times out of 10 on the fall. This is looking for reaction baits. In my mind, walleyes in particular probably aren't thinking food when they see this come by or hear it. It's an instinct. Fish, like any other wild animal, when something surprises them, when something comes by them fast and so on, they really don't have any control over it. They just simply turn and slash and bite, whether it's out of protection or whatever. It's why we call it a reaction bait. It's a bite. It's an instinct for them. So we're going to rip that hard, let it fall, pause for just a second, because there are times for walleyes in particular, when that that bait hits the bottom, the fish will actually come and trap that bait on the bottom and eat it. So let it pause for just a second, brief pause, and then rip it again. You'll be surprised how many times you'll rip, fall, go to rip it again, and you're basically setting the hook on a walleye because one had picked it up while it was paused on the bottom. That happens all the time as well. So this, a rip and wrap, and there are dozens of different rattle baits out there, and they're all very, very good. I really like the Rapalas, so that's why I have these here. But the rip and wrap is going to be bait number 2. So if you want to know what Chad is going to be doing Saturday morning, his first cast is going to be with a Berkeley Ripple Shad plastic. Okay. And after, I catch 3 or 4 walleyes. No, I'm kidding. After a handful of casts, I'm going to turn and pick up a rip and wrap, and I'm going to throw that. One of the things, a good tip from me, especially on these shallow water early season walleyes, is fish through an area. If you found that flat we're talking about, that's a hard bottom area. It's, a larger area with hard bottom where it looks like spawning ground. I'll fish through it with a plastic or a couple different plastics. Okay. And my hope is I catch a couple of fish. Before I move on to a completely different location, though, I will fish over that exact same spot with another, something completely different, like a rip and wrap. Fish are like us. When you go to the buffet, you don't get the exact same thing as the person in front of you, and the person behind you doesn't get the exact same thing that you do. We all like different stuff. Fish are no different. Okay? One fish may be triggered by the more aggressive plastic. Another fish is more triggered to bite by a subtle plastic that's just creeping along the bottom. And then there's the guy that wants neither one of those, but when this loud rattlebait comes screaming through his living room, he's going to eat that for sure. So different fish within the same school of fish are triggered by different things. Please do not be afraid to fish over an area 2 or even 3 different times with different presentations before you move on. You'll be surprised at how many more fish you can pull out of a specific spot just by showing them something different. Now, let's quickly talk about the tackle I'm going to use to do this, and it's extremely simple. You all have it, okay? Simply spinning tackle. That's the whole works for all of these presentations. Long casts are key, okay? This is a 7-foot Fenwick Techna PX. It's in medium action. I want a little bit of flexibility, helps with those long casts. I'll even go out to a 7.5 footer to help with casting distance. Okay, this is an Abu Garcia MGX 30 size reel, and then line is important. Okay, this is the new Berkley Forward. Okay, it's a coated braid, very similar to the old Berkley Nanofill. So it has a slick coating over the braided line, extremely strong, has all the great attributes of braid, but that slick coating, boy, does that increase your casting distance. Almost no resistance as it goes through the eyes, and you can chuck it a mile. So that's 10-pound test on the braid. And then I always put on 4, 5, 6 feet of a fluorocarbon leader. This is an 8-pound Berkley 100% fluorocarbon is the one that I've been using, but all the fluorocarbons are great. And that's essentially to give me that invisibility at the last 4 or 5 feet of line to the jig. And as a matter of fact, this is probably what's going to get the first cast of the day on Saturday. I already have it tied up. Okay, again, that's our Mission Tackle swim bait jig in 3/8 ounce with a 4-inch Berkley ripple shad, power bait ripple shad. So there it is, ready to roll. And that's the tackle system. And I'll use this same line and rod reel setup for all of the things we discussed today. So it's not that difficult, folks. Look for those locations where you know spawning walleyes are going to want to be. Hard bottom areas. Start shallow. Look for those shallow fish, especially early in the day and late in the day. And then if you don't find them, then slowly slide out and then back up and out until you kind of pinpoint a depth, and then you can concentrate more on that depth. But I'm going to start shallow. I'm going to start aggressive, and I'm going to use artificials, and hopefully we're going to have walleye dinner on Saturday and Sunday nights in the Cool Clan. One last tip, okay, for walleye fishing opener that, to be honest with you, has nothing to do with walleyes. Walleyes are tough. They can be. And it's frustrating sometimes because, like I said, each lake is going to be in such a different stage. You can have somebody on one lake that limits out, everybody's getting limits, and then 3 miles down the road, nobody can catch a fish. And that's because the lakes are very different. The water temperatures are different. And this time of year, the walleyes are acting very different. But don't let walleyes ruin your walleye opener. The last bait, a couple of baits I'm going to show you for walleye fishing opener are these guys right here. Yes, these are crappie jigs, panfish jigs. Please don't be a fish snob. Just because we all call it walleye opener doesn't mean you have to. There's a rule that says you have to fish only for walleyes and catch only walleyes. This right now is the best time of the year to catch lots and lots of big, beautiful crappies. They spawn They're in spawn mode too, so they're going to be extremely shallow, these fish. They are abundant, and if you want something to keep young people excited, the rest of your family that maybe isn't such a diehard walleye guy excited, people excited, tie up some ultralights before you go out. Make sure you have them in the boat and have a scoop of crappie minnows in there, okay? Because if the walleyes are frustrating you after a few hours, move into some shallow, hard bottom areas. Look in particular for emerging bulrushes, pencil reeds, some people call them. Those are my ultimate locations for spawning crappies, and you'll be amazed at how many fish. A slip float, a little jig. This is the rabbit hair jig from JB Lures. Okay, this is their tiny tickler. Tip it with a crappie minnow. A lot of times you don't even need that. Toss it out there, and believe me, you will save your day on the water and load the boat with crappies. I'm not going to say I guarantee it, but I almost guarantee it. So don't let finicky walleyes or walleyes that are post-spawn and don't want to eat or something like that ruin what could be a fantastic weekend. I won't. Believe me. I'm going to go out. I'll give the walleyes their due, 3, 4, 5 hours on opening morning. But if they're not cooperating, I'm headed for the spawning beds and the crappies, and I will load the boat. And a crappie dinner takes backseat to nothing, including a walleye dinner. So be prepared. Have multiple options in your boat, and regardless of what happens, folks, it'll be a successful walleye opener. More importantly than that, just enjoy your time out in our Northland outdoors with family, with friends, and with the all beautiful wildlife that we have all around us. It's just a great weekend. So get out there, have fun. Drop us a note at Northland Outdoors and post some pictures on our Facebook page. Let's see how you did on opening weekend, but that's next week. For now, good luck on the Minnesota Walleye Opener, and that's going to do it for this time. Another thank you to our sponsors, Ray's Sport and Marine, Muscatel Burns Ford, Lake of the Woods Tourism, and Devil's Lake Tourism. Thank you so much, guys. Another quick reminder, watch Northland Outdoors television. Check your local listings and don't miss an episode. Great stuff. Just get out there and enjoy our Northland Outdoors. Happy Walleye Opener, everybody. I'm Chad Cool. We'll see you next time on the Northland Outdoors podcast.